Welcome to the Rideshare Guy podcast, where you will learn about the rideshare and mobility industry straight from Harry Campbell, who's got over 5 years experience covering the industry and has talked to thousands of drivers. There's no better place to stay up to date, entertained, and educated. So let's dive in.
All right. Today we're joined by Zach Ein, who's the CEO and co-founder of Grassdoor, a weed delivery service operating, it looks like in California primarily. So Zach, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Nice to meet you, Harry.
Nice to meet you. I'm actually on the website right now looking at this great selection. So getting all the prompts and, sometimes it's funny because I do like food podcasts or you're talking about food delivery. And I always am like, wow, this podcast is making me hungry. And I don't know what this podcast is going to make me, but so I'm excited to chat. So first, you give us the quick pitch on yourself and also what Grassdoor is and, where you guys are operating for those who may not be familiar with the business.
Absolutely. Nice again to be on the podcast, Harry. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a software development company prior to Grassdoor. We were building complicated mobile apps, kind of end-to-end apps and business tools for clients, and had the crazy idea about 4 years ago to build the most robust cannabis delivery platform. And so it really started from our software development background and attempted to approach this as a pure software business.
Yeah.
And realized once we began that the regulators did not want tech companies coming into cannabis and just doing it as pure tech. And they said you actually had to be a license holding dispensary if you wanted to do deliveries. So we were forced or faced with the tough decision to become a cannabis retailer as opposed to just the courier tech service. And so that happened in the early days of the idea. We realized that it was inevitable that we become a retailer. And in August of 2019, we got our first retail license in the city of Los Angeles and launched Grassdoor.
Got it. And so paint the picture. In August 2019 in Los Angeles, I'm assuming weed, was it legal for everyone or was it just for those holding a medical card, or what did the landscape look like?
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually January 1st of 2018 that cannabis became recreationally legal in California. Before that, there was a medical program. But the real days of legal recreational cannabis was January 1st, 18. And so when we launched August of 19, it was still, very, very new. There wasn't, too many players that were super technological. If you think about cannabis delivery historically, the last thing you wanted was a paper trail.
Yeah.
Managing this with a robust tech platform, tracking every transaction is not what the legacy operators did. So we really entered an industry, and there was one major tech player, which was Ease, and then Grassdoor launched kind of shortly thereafter, and quickly grew and gained traction. So fast forwarding just a couple years, it's nearly 500 full-time drivers and a path to kind of domination that's ours to lose.
Yeah, and you guys are primarily operating in California, Los Angeles, in the Bay Area, or?
Correct. So we have a large hub in the Los Angeles area, and then a large hub in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then from those hubs, our drivers actually drive 100 miles in every direction.
Oh, wow.
So from that one hub in LA, we will send drivers up to Ventura and Oxnard, drivers in Palmdale, Barstow, all the way down to San Diego, and similarly in San Francisco.
And why is that? Is that because their customers don't have great selection or options when it comes to delivery in those areas, or?
The regulators actually created an opportunity, what they call the ice cream truck model. So you can actually travel around with inventory. And so we can give a driver, 10 or 15 orders that are pre-scheduled, and it'll keep that driver busy for the entire 8-hour shift. So unlike most courier services where you're going to a restaurant, you're waiting for the food to be prepared.
Point to point.
Our drivers never leave the car. So they get the inventory for the whole shift. As they approach a customer's address, the customer is told to come outside. They meet the driver at the passenger window. And it's probably the only courier job I've ever heard of where the drivers never leave the car. You don't have to have anybody get in your vehicle. You never get out of your vehicle. And you never wait in line at restaurants. It's pretty convenient. And you just are in your personal space all day long until the shift is over. And you'll go back to the hub and return the inventory that you haven't sold, as well as the cash you collected.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a, pretty convenient model for the courier, right? Because obviously with Uber and Lyft, you've got people in your car. A lot of folks have switched over to last mile delivery because then you don't have to deal with people. But you do still have to, go up to people's doors, which is, easy at a house, for example, in a residential neighborhood. But if you go into an apartment complex or, that last mile, that last foot of a lot of deliveries can be, challenging, especially if you need to verify IDs or anything like that. So it's interesting. I don't know that I've actually heard of a last mile delivery model where the customer has to come to you, right? I mean, if you think about, I remember when I did my first training and orientation for Doordash like 7 years ago. In the training, they literally said, we're Doordash. You take it to the door, like it's in the company's name, right? And this, I
We're
guess,
Grassdoor, so we may have made the same mistake with the naming, but I was the first driver. So those first few hundred deliveries, it was myself.
mm-hmm.
Safety was always my biggest concern, and that's
Yeah.
been the theme of the business ever since. So it's not even enough to just say you're not going to get out of the car. We
Mm-hmm.
want the driver to be very comfortable with the customer. So whether it's their first order or their 100th order, obviously we're going to kind of measure the risk of that situation differently. So first time patient, we're very safe, conservative. We're
Mm-hmm.
barely rolling down the window.
Hmm.
We're making sure that the ID matches the selfie. So we're making
Yeah.
each customer take a selfie. Versus it's the 50th order.
Yeah.
We have 50 comments from the 50 drivers prior. So we
Mm-hmm.
actually allow the drivers to read the comments of every driver that's worked with that customer in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to get that driver as comfortable as we possibly can, as safe as they possibly can be for each
Yeah.
delivery.
So when it comes to drivers, obviously safety can be a big issue across multiple different services, whether it's people or food, alcohol, marijuana. So what do you tell your drivers when it comes to, sort of staying safe and, maybe assuaging any fears that they might have?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not to be taken lightly. It's
mm-hmm.
different than some of those other categories. The first thing that happens is an all-day training session. So the training session is probably half safety, mainly explaining all the things that we're doing behind the scenes to keep them safe.
Yeah.
And so every customer, for example, is verified. There's a selfie, there's an ID, there's a back
mm-hmm.
office person making sure everything matches up. We're looking at that license number.
Yeah.
And then it's these rules that are in place to make sure nothing happens at the point of delivery, even if we did a proper check. So for example, we learned quickly, every transaction is happening through that passenger window.
Yeah.
There should be a strategy in place to make sure that there's nothing blocking, your
mm-hmm.
exit as the driver in case something ever did go awry.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that training to make sure that you guide the customer to that passenger window. You leave a clear path in front of the vehicle in case it ever gets sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really all those checks before we get to the point of delivery that has allowed us to be safe. We've now done nearly 2 million deliveries, no injuries, no major incidences. And it's everything for our business. I mean, if we can't conduct safe transactions, the state regulators aren't going to be very supportive of cannabis delivery, and the whole thing could come to an end. And so it's really our goal to create those best practices, to explain to the state, what those practices are that allows us to keep the driver safe, and hopefully get other operators, following those same
mm-hmm.
Practices, so that the industry as a whole doesn't have any vulnerabilities. If there's an operator that is doing things the wrong way and they're a target for the bad guys, it could hurt all of the operators. So we're trying to set the example, and we do that mainly through our technology. We have
mm-hmm.
a very large tech team, 75 full-time engineers,
oh, wow.
just thinking about this all day long, the experiences of our drivers, the feedback, the rating
mm-hmm.
system for customers, just like the customers rating the driver, we're rating the customers, and we make those reviews, comments available to every driver and customer service thereafter, so that we can understand who we're dealing with.
Yeah, so the drivers can feel comfortable. And I mean, you mentioned this, it does seem like this is a pretty highly regulated industry. At the start, you wanted to be a tech platform and you ended up having to be a dispensary. And I know one big difference when it comes to the courier side of things is that I believe they have to they're legally required to be employees, right? Is that true?
That's the biggest difference. Once you get past the fact that you're not delivering a burrito and you're delivering cannabis through your passenger window at 9 p.m. at night, potentially in downtown LA, which, is not necessarily for everyone. Once you get past that and you start to feel comfortable with what we've set up to keep everyone safe, you move on to what is this opportunity for drivers. And in my opinion, it's the best driver gig you could possibly have. So starting with the fact that it is a full-time W-2 position. We have part-time drivers, but it's a W-2 position. We're paying $15 an hour in SoCal and a little bit more in NorCal, but then there's a heavily tipped product, right? So you're getting pretty decent tips. We also pay the drivers 57 cents per mile they drive. And that is the maximum that the IRS allows for a deductible expense.
And they're using their own vehicles?
They're using their own vehicles for the most part, and they're getting that 57 cents back. The average driver does drive between 100 and 150 miles per 8-hour shift. So the reimbursements do add up quite a bit. It's full benefits, medical, dental, vision. And we just keep making it more exciting and more lucrative for these drivers. Obviously, a lot of competition out there. But from what we've learned and heard from drivers, it is significantly more profitable and enjoyable than the rideshare gigs.
Well, why do you think that is, that it's more profitable?
Well, first of all, you're getting paid when you're idle, right? Which is the first thing that's not happening. The tipping is significant. I think that what we all remember about Uber and Lyft was there was no tips in the beginning. And they've conditioned a lot of customers to not tip.
Definitely.
That's certainly not the case here. And it's the benefits, right? I mean, what California has done for employees, it's obviously an employee-driven state where the state really takes care of employees. This is the hardest place to operate as a company, and the best place to work as an employee. So just in the requirements that the state lays out there for employees in California, from paid time off to health insurance, things that just don't exist in the gig economy. So certainly the foundation of the comp should be significantly greater than the typical gig worker. I mean, it's hard. There's going to be the exceptional situations, maybe in an Uber Black or something where it might be better. I'm not sure. But the next best thing that I think is fascinating about this category is you're delivering happiness. When you pull up to a customer's door and they had placed a cannabis delivery 30 minutes earlier. And 30 minutes later, magically a driver appears with 3 different eighths of your favorite cannabis and a vape pen and an edible. It is, a fun
like
transaction.
Christmas, huh?
It's fun to order. It's fun to receive, and they're very thankful. I think some of that comes through in the tipping, but I'd say 999 out of 1,000 customers are just so happy that a service like this exists. It's 2021. You place an order online, and 30 minutes later, premium cannabis is delivered to you.
It's definitely, I think I think in general, right, like maybe not exclusive to the gig economy, for any job, people are typically doing it for the money, right? They call it a job for a reason. You got to make money. But then it is nice, with some of these other services, right? Like one of the nice things about Uber and Lyft, you get to talk to people, right? One of the things about food delivery, you don't have to talk to people. So depending on your personality, right? And then, with marijuana delivery, obviously, like you said, you're sort of delivering happiness. So I do imagine customers are pretty happy. I'm sure that leads to potentially higher tips. And, it sounds like as far as the earnings potential, if they're at $15 an hour, for example, which doesn't sound super high, as a base rate, but obviously they have full benefits. And then they also get tips, if they're doing $10 to $15 or 10 to 15 orders per day. I'm guessing it's at least a $5 tip on each order. So that's another $50 to $75. Then also the 57 cents per mile, 100 to 150 miles, that's another $57 to $75. So it adds up, $200-$300 a day. It sounds like, who do you think is kind of like, I don't know, does that math actually check out? Does that sound about right? Or do you have any data you want to share?
Yeah, so it averages to $1,400 to $1,700 a week before the performance incentive bonus. So we also have
so you also have some bonuses.
Essentially about a $5,000 bonus annually for the highest performing 30% of our fleet. And so we do have stats. Everything is data driven, and so the highest performing drivers not only get the bonus, but they get rewarded with more deliveries. So a very efficient driver will get more orders dispatched to them, allowing them to make more mileage reimbursements and more tips. So it starts to kind of snowball.
So what are those metrics that determine a top driver for you guys?
Yeah, I think the most interesting one that I think all of the gig economy drivers can imagine is, at the end of the day, you're getting a route in real time from where you are to the customer's address. and we know what the Google traffic and ETA is. And so we compare the driver's actual times to what Google said it should be with traffic and everything factored in. And then we kind of set the end time when you hit a 200-meter geofence. You don't have to wait for if the customer takes a while to come downstairs, you don't get penalized. You get 200 meters from the address, and it tracks your efficiency score. So efficiency score is certainly the one that allows you to get more orders than the less efficient drivers.
So would that be like the faster you drive, the better, or the faster you get there, or can you go too fast? The numbers are actually quite interesting.
The average is 30% slower than Google. A very fast driver is 5% slower than Google. You're preparing sometimes, for the delivery, you're preparing the order, perhaps. But that's the average. So the last thing we're trying to encourage, we are tracking everybody's speed as well. So the last thing we are encouraging is people to drive fast, but being efficient, how long it takes to accept the order on your app. The efficient drivers only take a few seconds. Some drivers are probably watching YouTube videos or playing phone games, and they'll take 3 or 5 minutes to accept an order. And again, just reduces your efficiency score. We get the customer feedback score. That's a big factor. And then also order accuracy, making sure that, you're collecting the right amount of money, the order's packed accurately, or other, big factors in that scoring system.
Yeah. Well, because I think that is one of the interesting things about, working as an employee. I mean, just more generally, right, versus independent contractor and running your own business, or sort of running your own business as an Uber or Lyft driver, right? You're kind of, as an independent contractor, you're kind of incentivized to be as efficient as possible, to, I would say you're directly incentivized, literally, like the better driver you are, the more money you make in the moment, in the day, right? If you see a trip come in and you're like, not that great of a trip, not that profitable, I might not get a ride back if I drive an hour out east, right? Like the cutthroat drivers will almost kind of reject those, right? And then they understand, like, hey, that helps my earnings. Maybe not the best for the customer or the company, but I have to look out for myself. Employees a little bit different though, right? Because you still want to incentivize efficiency. I think that's a good way to put it. You want to incentivize efficiency, but at the same time, I'm curious, what are some of the differences you've seen there between, the types of drivers that you're hiring, or, maybe even who's like the best fit, to kind of work one of these gigs for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I'm speaking to an audience of more gig economy workers. This is, a more traditional W-2 job.
Yeah.
It isn't just work when you want. There are schedules, but we're growing so fast that you can typically get the schedule you want. So, I mean, that is kind of the first, branch.
And they would schedule like 4-hour, 8-hour shifts, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's typically 8-hour shifts. We do have about 30% of our fleet that works 5 to 6 hours in the evening. We also have a team of drivers that do 4 10s. So they're getting 4 10-hour shifts. Typically.
What are the busiest times of demand?
Yeah, the busiest time is getting off work, that 4 to 8 p.m. range, particularly Friday nights.
It's not to start the day.
That's not to start the day, although we do have quite a few scheduled orders in the mornings.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's quite a big rush on Fridays. I would say to any drivers considering this gig, this job, we probably need you on Friday evenings. But,
Friday evenings.
There's a lot of flexibility with the schedules.
So it sounds like weekdays kind of more in the afternoons after work, and then I assume Friday evenings.
35% of our drivers do the morning shift. They typically work from 8:30 a.m. to 4 or 6 in the afternoon, depending on which team they're on. And then a much larger shift comes on between 2 and 4 p.m. and then they work until.
Got it. Yeah. And do you see similar sort of high demand or peak times like Friday nights, Saturday nights, maybe holidays, big events, stuff like that too?
The sequence is Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday.
Okay. So like kind of what you might imagine when people are out having fun, looking to have a good time, not rocket science, right?
and typically our customers are they're using it as medicine. And so they are, most of our customers are consuming cannabis all day long to help them sleep, to relieve anxiety, to get them through their days. That is my experience with the cannabis industry. People are not doing this actually recreationally. This is
really?
Instead of other antidepressants, anti-anxiety, or medicine they take to focus or sleep. I mean, this is a miracle product. From my perspective and everyone in our company. And the more we survey our customers and the more we learn about this magical plant, it's pretty amazing.
Got it. So they're actually not using it, or at least in the surveys you're running, your customers are telling you that it's less about, like, I want to go out Friday night and, relax. It's a little bit more.
The reason why it's Friday is because that's payday. So it's not that
Interesting.
they're getting ready to party. It's just when a lot of our customers get their paychecks is our feeling.
Interesting. Are there any other sort of, I guess you would say interesting findings that you've seen, either from like customer surveys or data or the way people are using the products, or, like I like the anecdote you shared about how you're delivering happiness. Is there anything sort of that surprised you, on the customer or driver side since you started this business?
I mean, one thing that, we're always trying to figure out, why a customer might not reorder, or as we call it, churn. And, we of course blame ourselves. Was it a slow delivery? Did they get the wrong product? Was it bad product, old product? And from our surveys, the number one reason why people don't come back are lifestyle changes. So people will actually get off cannabis and decide that it's not working for them, or they get a new job that drug tests them. So it's usually not us that that causes people to not order from us. The second biggest would be lack of funds. So people actually can't necessarily afford to consume as often. So that's all been interesting. I'd say the biggest one is that it's not people doing this to get high. Right? Yeah. They're doing it to get through their days.
Got it.
And one, obviously we just went through COVID, or in COVID. I have COVID now. So if I do something easily, my first podcast, it's quite convenient to have COVID for my very first podcast in my life.
Well, no worries. I had it a couple of weeks ago. So we're luckily recovered. It wasn't too bad, but we're on the same boat.
Absolutely. But, we went through, we launched the business, just a year before COVID. Yeah. And so COVID hit, from what was going on the news, from Donald Trump to COVID to all these stressful aspects of life today. Consumption went way up. And, I think with this administration, there was a significant number of people that didn't need to consume as much just because of their anxiety went down. Again, maybe my own personal view there, but it has been interesting to see how people use this plant to get through their lives and the different cycles. Another big cycle that happened was, people stopped commuting to work, and so when they were ordering changed. So we're back to people somewhat going back to offices, and that 4 to 8 p.m. afternoon being the busy time. But during COVID, it was just as busy in the morning as it was, at 4 p.m. now. And so we've watched different cycles, and we have to reschedule our drivers accordingly. And it's just been interesting to kind of see the cycles and what drives people to order and when.
So I guess it sounds like you guys, it sort of pays for you to sort of be aware of what's going on in the world and changes and trends and things like that, because that does affect your business and when people are ordering and where people are ordering. And
rainy days, people tend to order, right? On a rainy day, you're probably a little less motivated to go to a dispensary. What's most interesting about cannabis, and this is something I think about a lot, people compare it to alcohol delivery. The thing about alcohol is you can go to Bevmo, Ralph's, Costco and get your alcohol at the same time you get your groceries. Cannabis is the one product where you have to go to a special store.
Right.
You're going to get, carted at the door. There's a big security guard with a gun. You're going to wait in line so that you can talk to a bud tender and then check out. It's a stop you have to make just for your cannabis, which is inconvenient. And so it just lends itself to being the perfect product for delivery. It's also a higher dollar item. So in just one small, bag, what we call an exit bag, you can have $100 or $200 worth of product. So it's efficient. There's high average cart sizes. It's easy to handle the product, big tips. It's the dream product category. And I shouldn't say this too loud in case other delivery service operators are listening, but it's the dream product category for a delivery tech operator.
Yeah. Are most of the orders that customers are placing, are they on demand or scheduled, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's about half and half. So we, the drivers are receiving scheduled orders it's about half of the orders they deliver on a shift are scheduled. The other half, they are given a little extra inventory based on some data and the zone they're going to, so that they can pack some orders on the fly. But we're trying to push as many people to scheduled orders as possible for many reasons.
Got it. What would be sort of the main reason why scheduled works best? Is it just easier for you guys? I assume. Yeah.
So, if you found, if I go back to 2.5 years ago, there was very few brands. If you asked a cannabis consumer what their favorite cannabis brand was, I don't think they would have had one. Today it is brand driven. And so the scheduled menu is a lot more products, a lot more brands versus the few things that a driver can carry to support those kind of, on-demand orders. So it's really the selection.
Do you guys have an in-person store experience, or is it only delivery?
We are 100% delivery business.
Gotcha.
Really the only one of its kind. Doing this at scale with commercial warehouses that are packed with pallet racks full of cannabis products. And it's a cannabis delivery business at scale and growing very fast. So one thing I'd want your audience to know is that it is, in my opinion, the best delivery job there is, but it's also a foot in the door to the cannabis industry. I guess maybe here I should mention that we do offer a 30% discount for our employees as well.
Nice.
And so we do try to get cannabis advocates working for us. It allows them to speak more intelligently to the customers. It just makes them more excited about the job in general. And this is a foot in the door into cannabis. I have made it a priority to promote from within. Most of our managers started as drivers. Many of those drivers became managers, are now directors, heads of departments.
Interesting.
And so we are, in the process of really dozens of stories of people starting as drivers and now having major roles in the company. And that I think is really exciting.
Yeah. So, one of the things that, I'm kind of trying to get at here is I'm curious who the perfect driver is, sort of like what are the archetype or the qualities or the type of person, that would be the perfect fit for Grassdoor. And before you answer that question, I kind of wanted to comment because that's one of the things that you just mentioned, I think is lacking in the gig economy, right? When you're driving for Uber and Lyft and you've got 25,000 trips or really any platform, 4.99 star rating, you get paid the same as the next guy or lady right next to you, or even a brand new driver. Sometimes you might be getting worse bonus offers than, there really isn't that, I think, loyalty and reward for service in the gig economy. And I think that, like obviously people figure it out and get by, but there isn't a lot of loyalty on both sides. And I think that can be frustrating, right? Because in a normal, employment situation, the better you do, right, the more you get paid, or, the more loyalty the company has to you, or the better they treat you. So it seems like that's definitely, maybe a theme. I don't know if it's something, how conscious you are of it, but seems like, something that is definitely that's one of the advantages, it seems like, from what you're describing here to me.
Absolutely.
Like if I really care about like upward mobility and becoming, not only a top driver, but, more of an advocate and involved in this company, this could be a cool opportunity for that type of person.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just off the cuff, I don't think that the typical gig economy operators, Uber, Doordash, Lyft, when you're inefficient, I don't think they necessarily feel the burden of that, right?
No, the companies don't, right?
The companies don't. In our case, we're paying you in your idle, we're paying you per mile, and these customers are very valuable. The lifetime value of a cannabis customer that's loyal to us is worth thousands of dollars. And so we want the best drivers that aren't taking a personal errand when they're on their way, because the customer sees you're on your way. They think you're going to be there in 10 minutes. If you take a quick stop for yourself or any kind of funny business, it's not good for our customers. And so we want to retain the best drivers. We want to keep them happy. Every year we're just adding more benefits, more incentives to keep our best drivers. There's a lot of competition amongst the gig economies and the driving jobs. And so we want to be the place that it'd be your first choice. If you want to spend your day in your vehicle, not in an office, you want to be on the road, you like driving, you don't want to work necessarily for someone that's, hovering over you, micromanaging you, that this would be your first choice, right? As long as you're comfortable with cannabis, that this would be the first choice. If you don't get the Grassdoor job, then maybe you look elsewhere. And that's really what we're trying to do. I think, the other big difference, like I said earlier, is I do think that cannabis advocate, or the person that's pro cannabis, loves cannabis, that should help or kind of create a branch. I think there's people that have no interest in cannabis and don't think it's such a miracle plant, and they're probably not going to come our way. But if you like cannabis, you believe in it, and all the other things I mentioned, I think you're a good fit for it. We want, a relatively newer car. You are driving your own car. I think the rule is 15 years or newer. No pickup trucks, no motorcycles, closed vehicles. The perfect car will probably be a Prius or a small SUV or hatchback. And if you have kind of those vehicles, and you also need to have a good driving record. The insurance for our business is, you can't imagine what we pay for the various types of insurance policies we have. And so it's only doable, it's only affordable for us if we hire quote unquote good drivers without.
Why is the insurance so high? Because I mean, there's no passenger, or there's a lot less passenger liability, right? Versus like Uber and Lyft that has a big insurance cost.
Yeah, I think there's just no competition. One thing in cannabis is big banks big
Yeah.
tech companies, nobody can interact with cannabis today.
Yeah.
It's still federally illegal. And so the biggest players in the world aren't in the space. And that means insurance providers as well. So the few insurance providers that are in are
Got it.
wealthy, you know, and
Got
so
it.
the only way for the numbers to work is if we hire what we call good drivers, which I believe is no infractions on your
Got
on your
it.
record.
So how do you find your drivers? Do you hire a lot from the gig economy, or where do you get
Yeah,
them?
I mean, they're definitely flocking from the gig economy. I mean, during the first 90 days of COVID, we hired 250 drivers.
From Uber and Lyft, or more from food
There is
delivery, or
predominantly Uber and Lyft.
okay.
You know, I think that.
And what do
as
they
a
tell you?
company,
Why are they coming to you instead of, and skipping out of quitting Uber and Lyft, for example, and coming to you?
I mean, I think it's all the reasons where we've been mentioning here. It's
Yeah.
you're getting paid when you're idle, you're getting paid for your vehicle reimbursements, you're getting full benefits, you're getting bonuses, you're a valuable member of our company, and you're not kind of being used and abused by the gig economy. I think California obviously made a big stink about, trying to kill the gig economy and these 1099 driver workers. And we're already past that, right? We do think we don't look fondly on that. We think that it is taking advantage of people. I think that there's probably a hybrid that the gig economy would like to see, where you're getting the protections of being an employee, but preserving the flexibility of your scheduling. And I think California has kind of failed to kind of reconcile those two things. But in our case, if you can commit yourself to a schedule, and of course you can modify your schedule, with some advance warning to the company, you're getting the protections that I think any employee should have. I don't think that the state is fighting as hard as it is to protect employees and workers in the state. It doesn't make sense to not take advantage. Like, the state is fighting for the employees, and yet, these big tech companies are pushing back hard and lobbying and preventing, the rules to go in place where you do need to be an employee and get all the protections of being an employee. We're ahead of that. We've jumped that curve, and this is a driving job that has all the protections and benefits of being an employee.
Right. I mean, so you guys obviously are required to hire employee drivers. So if you were looking at Prop 22, I guess, are you a fan of, Uber and Lyft drivers? Like, do you think they should be employees or independent contractors if you had to pick?
I think it's kind of what I was trying to get to a second ago, which is, I understand that the gig economy, you want to be able to work when you want to work, and there's the flexibility. So it's the state should figure out a way to allow the tech companies to offer the flexibility and the protections of the state. However, I think that Uber, Lyft wouldn't economically work if they were paying for idle time, paying for benefits, and doing all the things that Grassdoor is doing. And so it's just, they would probably kill their business models. And so they fought tooth and nail to keep them as 1099 workers. We're in a position, we were forced into this position by the state. And the reason why I think that happened is cannabis is already controversial.
Right.
And so when the state said, hey, we're going to allow cannabis operators and cannabis businesses to evolve and grow, they wanted to set an example and not have the pushback of anything like taking advantage of employees or any. So they wanted to create the conditions that they could be proud of, and that would set an example for operators in the state.
Yeah. I mean, I think it kind of makes sense, like, I'm sure there are some in the cannabis industry who maybe feel, that there's too much regulation, but like you said, it was already a controversial thing. And so it's like, all right, let's get rid of some of the other potential controversies, let's hire the drivers as employees so we don't have to deal with that issue. And, so it's a little safer. They can get a little better training. I think it's fair. I think it makes sense. It kind of reminds me of actually what happened with scooters, like Uber and Lyft came in and they were totally unregulated and took over cities. And, then you start to see some of the negative externalities. And then when scooters came, which I think is a much better product for the environment and cities and all that. But, then they were kind of almost like over-regulated in a way, because it's like, well, we kind of got screwed over by Uber and Lyft. So let's now drop the hammer on these guys. Right. And, there's some positives and negatives, but, I kind of understand where they're coming from. And, I mean, I guess what I will say is I think, and, it sounds like you're kind of a fan of this hybrid approach. And I mean, I just did a podcast with the city of Seattle, and, drivers are independent contractors there, but they're guaranteed a minimum wage, and it does include idle time, and they have a third-party driver resolution center. So, it seems like I think we're on the same page. Like, I think it sounds like we're both fans of a system that kind of, allows drivers to keep that flexibility. But, there are a lot of things that every driver cares about, making more money and getting paid for idle time, reimbursement, not not being unfairly deactivated, getting paid faster. There are a lot of cool features, and it sounds like you guys are kind of working towards, their employees, but providing them with a lot of the benefits of, like that the gig economy has uncovered, right? Like the flexibility in some of those other areas.
I mean, just the security in your job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, California does not let employers burn insurance employees. I mean,
Right.
to hire somebody, you're very much committed to that employee unless they really need to be let go for cause. And in our case, almost never happens.
Yeah.
I mean, we're making pretty serious commitments to these drivers. That's why the onboarding process, the background checks are pretty robust. The training is robust. But once you're with us, you have security, and this is a job. We're not going anywhere. I think that as whether it's categories like cannabis or the competition offering more to the drivers out there that are looking for work, will eventually force the hand of some of these bigger tech companies to, hey, if they want to, have enough drivers on staff, that they're going to have to be competitive with what they're offering.
Right. Well, I think they're, at least the Uber and Lyfts are kind of seeing that driver crunch right now, and some of the downsides, right, to that churn, and not treating.
I can't get Ubers anymore. I mean, the whole thing with Uber was you could get an Uber in 2 minutes, no matter where you were.
Yeah.
It's totally hit or miss now. And
where are you based?
What was that?
Where are you based?
I'm in northern Los Angeles.
Okay.
Calabasas, yeah.
Got it. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing everything about Grassdoor. Definitely seems like a good opportunity for folks in the gig economy, or really anyone interested in the transportation industry, cannabis. I like the sort of advocacy side of things too, because there are a lot of people that are fans of this plant. And, I'm excited to see where Grassdoor goes in the future. So if folks want to learn more about Grassdoor, maybe become a customer, maybe become a driver, I'm sure we've convinced at least a few people on this podcast. Where should they go, and what should they look for from Grassdoor in the future?
Absolutely. So first of all, grassdoor.com, easy to find a driver application button on the kind of the side menu. You can also email drive@Grassdoor. Grassdoor it's becoming pretty dominant in cannabis delivery, and so the positions are not just driver, right? We've got dispatch managers, we've got customer service. Everyone's remote, and so we also offer remote jobs for various roles. We're always hiring. But again, drive@Grassdoor.com would get you a quick response. Going to Grassdoor.com and finding the apply to be a driver tab. And again, not just drivers, but anybody that's perhaps maybe sick of driving could also, look into this as a potential career. It is very exciting. Harry, I'm happy that you let me speak to your audience and to you. We're not going anywhere. We love it. It's very exciting times for Grassdoor, and just trying to get the best quality people we can. And make every customer happy.
Got it.
So it's exciting for us.
Very cool. And final question: what are the expansion plans for Grassdoor? Are you guys looking to kind of expand in LA and Bay Area, go to other cities, other states? What's on the roadmap?
As the most dominant cannabis delivery service in California, we need to quickly cover the entire state.
Got it.
So the next hub that will open will be in the Sacramento area.
Mm-hmm.
We do San Diego from LA today, so those are long drives, but the reimbursements on those drives are massive. So it tends to be some of our most aggressive, highest earning drivers go down to San Diego. But we'll have a San Diego hub shortly, a Fresno hub certainly in 2022. So it's about 6 hubs. We'll cover California this year, and then we'll move into the next states.
Very cool. All right. Well, I'm excited to see the future for Grassdoor. Zach, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Harry. Appreciate it very much.